How are you?
I'm great.
I have just a quick memory of being at the White House once for an outdoor event, and you drifted by, and I just said, what is it like to live in the White House as a kid? And you said, sometimes they have these big state dinners, and I'm supposed to do my homework, and I just sit at the top of the stairs and listen to what's going on and wish they'd keep it down. And I was like, that's such a great perspective on a really nice, normal kid living in the White House. I think we are going to move it to questions now, and we should start over here.
Hi, my name is Allie McNamara, and I'm from Illinois College. And my question is, what piece of advice would you give your 20-year-old self that many of us in the audience could also use at this point in our lives?
Chelsea and Conan can easily remember what it was like to be 20. But I do remember. My only advice is that, and I don't see this sadly, it doesn't take long to live a life. And the fuller it is, the faster it goes. So, all of you are part of a relatively recent phenomenon in human history. You can choose what to do with your waking hours. Most of the people who have ever lived before, just a couple of hundred years ago, never had that choice. That's why you're here, because you're making unique choices. And never disempower yourself. That's my advice. Follow your heart as well as your head, and don't disempower yourself. Don't give up. Failure's not a crime. The failure to try, however, is. And just
My message would be about skincare. It ruined my social life. Avoid oily foods, that's all I've got.
You're Irish, you gotta be careful with your skin.
I know, I'm Irish. 5 minutes in the sun and I look drunk.
So sunscreen, too, is probably...
Lots of sunscreen.
Lots of sunscreen.
Yeah, when I go to the beach, I look like an old woman. Giant hat. How about you? Do you have advice for your younger self?
I think I'd like to echo something that my dad said earlier, something that we talked a little bit about in the afternoon plenary, which is to always be open to possibilities, to never lose curiosity and the humility to be curious and to be inspired to do something unexpected, unanticipated, unforeseen. I think it is important to have a plan. But I also think it's important to have the comfort to deviate from that plan if something more compelling, an opportunity, a partnership, sometimes even a person comes along that was not in the plan.
All right. Next question, yes.
Hello. My name is Latoya Gonzalez, and I'm a student from Miami-Dade College. And my question is, if you all were back in college, sitting in one of these seats, what would be your commitment to action?
Great question.
That's a good question.
I think I would do, I would have two, if you'll give me two.
You can have, he can have two.
Yeah.
Can he? He can have two.
First of all, I would, particularly if I were in Miami, I would have a commitment that would accelerate as dramatically as I possibly could the deployment of renewable energy in my neighborhood, in my college, and everywhere else, you know. And if I were in Miami, I'd also be trying to support whatever resilience initiatives there were, because Florida is perhaps the most vulnerable place in the country to rising sea levels first. The second thing I would do, if I were my younger self and I lived in a wonderful, diverse environment, and I once gave a commencement to just one of the many commencement ceremonies that your university has, and everybody came in carrying the flag of their country of origin. It was stunning. I would organize people in groups that would commit to meet together for a year and be honest about the things that they felt about people of different cultures and faiths, and not be afraid to say, and I'd make them talk about not how they feel when they're their better selves, but when they wake up in the morning without enough sleep, halfway angry, feeling the world's going to pieces, what their darker selves is. I would get people to become people to each other. You know, in Central Africa, where I started a lot of our health work and where we work still with over 100,000 small farmers, when people meet each other and they're all walking, nobody's got any mobile transportation, and someone says, hello, how are you, good morning, the response translated into English is not, I'm fine, how are you? It is, I see you. And you ought to try it just as an exercise. When you walk out of this room, look for all the people in uniforms that are working for this great school, that are doing things that make this meeting possible, that have thousands of people walk by them every day, and never once look at them, never see them, never know they're there. And those are the two things I would do, because I think if you saw everybody, you would think of more good things to do with your lives than I could imagine.
I completely agree. I mean, when you asked that question, I kind of went in my mind back to when I was in school, and not kind of to what I would do today, but I think the answer is similar. When I was in college, I discovered, although that's a terrible word, but I kind of stumbled upon Paul Farmer, whom I know many of you now know, but 20 years ago was not particularly well known. And he became kind of one of my galvanizing role models in life. And today is someone I'm really grateful to have the chance to work alongside through some of the work that my father mentioned. And I'm proud, in total disclosure, to be on the board of Partners in Health with him, and that he serves on our Health Access Board at the Clinton Foundation. One of the things that he and I first talked about 20 years ago almost, and continue to talk about today, is the absence of real health literacy here in the United States, and the challenge of helping translate kind of what the CDC, or the Centers for Disease Control, kind of puts out as alerts about Ebola or Zika into real information that empowers people and does not translate into fear and stigma and isolationism. And so I think my commitment to action, if I were kind of thinking about myself, you know, almost 20 years ago when I was at Stanford as a freshman, would be how to try to solve that challenge, not only on my campus, but in my community of Palo Alto and East Palo Alto at the time, and more broadly around the AIDS crisis. And today is something that kind of he and I are trying to figure out with others. How do we kind of prevent the widespread panic that happened in this country around Ebola? And for people who do feel drawn to and inspired, tell people if they really want to engage, they should be supporting people like Dr. Berry and the Well Body Alliance. And to do the same now around Zika. And I think that would be my commitment and action. How to translate what the CDC does so well to people who are already kind of always paying attention, to everyone who sometimes pays attention, so that we're inspired and empowered to do kind of the right things in solidarity with one another while still protecting our health. And to prevent and hopefully eliminate the risk of stigma and isolationism that too often comes instead.
Mr. Conan O'Brien, I originally came across CGIU by watching your show. Through your talents and unique humor, you have acquired a considerable following stemming from today's youth. How do you act on and take advantage of this platform to influence tomorrow's leaders and raise awareness on the critical issues of today and tomorrow, such as those dealt with here at CGIU?
The fact that I'm up here with these two and you're asking me a question is incredibly flattering. Thank you very much. I mentioned YouTube earlier. I started in 1993, back in the old days when there were 3 networks. Now we live in a world of YouTube, and what has been stunning to me is that my work is now in parts of the country and seen by young people that I didn't even know they had access to what I was doing. So I had an experience 6 weeks ago. I was getting a lot of mail from Seoul, Korea, and South Korea, and I didn't, just one, that's great. I didn't understand why I was getting these gifts from Seoul, South Korea. I didn't understand because I checked and they said, you're not on there. And of course, I'm stuck in the old way of thinking. I decided to go visit South Korea. I got on a commercial flight. I took a camera crew with me. We arrived at the airport. The footage is on YouTube. I get there and there's 2,000 screaming men and women screaming, and flashbulbs and pushing and shoving, and they've got signs and they're crying. And they're so, in a good way, crying, not in in America they cry in a bad way when they say, but they, and I'm very honored by that. I think by nature I'm a humble person, but I very much believe in almost a quasi kind of diplomacy that you can do. My humor is I often make fun of myself. When I went to Cuba a year ago, when I went to Armenia, when I went with the First Lady, Michelle Obama, to Qatar Air Force Base, when I just went to Korea, I try to be the silly American who's trying to learn their ways. And I try to humble myself. And so often my greatest joy is someone who doesn't even speak my language laughing at me because I can't eat their food, I'm butchering the language, I'm doing the best I can. I think America has an image in this world of maybe we're arrogant. Sometimes people see us as only caring about ourselves and having a solipsistic worldview, and it's just all about us. When I go to these places, I like to show them an American who is happy to be laughed at, is happy to humble himself and be silly. And I think in a way, that is how possibly, in some tiny, tiny way, I can contribute. Everywhere I go, people from different countries, because I've started playing video games, and that has gone viral across all these different countries. In the Netherlands, people come up to me who don't even speak English, and they start hugging me. And it's creepy. No, but it's really nice. It's really nice. And I try to let them know that the person they saw on that video in their home country is really that person. And I'll give them the time that they need. And so it's a small way, but I'm trying to spread that concept of what Americans can be like, which is, I'm humble about it, very humble about it. Yes, who's next? I think I have to go with the microphone, yes. I don't want to exclude anyone. I want to make sure I do this the right way.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Amelia Colban. I'm a student at Columbia University, and I'm working on a team called Flip National. Thank you all for creating this space. As a founding member of Flip National, I'm proud to work on a team committed to promoting first-generation and low-income student communities. This weekend, I'm even prouder to be a member of this incredible generation of leaders. To have the space, support, and resources necessary to develop commitments like these we're discussing here is an astounding privilege. However, to invest time in volunteering and social entrepreneurship can be an inaccessible luxury for many under-resourced and underrepresented students. How can low-income students find the same freedom to prioritize global development as do our socioeconomically better represented peers?
Well, first, let's start here and then go down to the campus level. One of the things we try to do, as I said to Conan in our opening segment, is make sure we pay the way of people to come here, or we raise the money to do it, who have no resources, both in America and from other countries. And secondly, this is your first year we've actually raised $1 million to help people actually fund their ideas. And I hope we can keep raising more and more and more money for it, because I think it's important that you just, even people who don't have the ability to raise any money for themselves, if they have a good idea, have a chance to implement it. Secondly, to have the resources, you have to have the time. And I personally think it is important that we take aggressive steps to make sure that people who come to our country, at least, and pursue education can know from the beginning to the end that they can finish school without unbearable debt, and that what debt they have will be easily manageable as a small percentage of their after-tax income, whatever they do. Then when they're in college, even if they have to work, let's say, 10 hours a week and work study, if they want to do this bad enough, they'll find a way to do it. And I think those are the two answers that, to me, are important. Give people the tools they need, even if they don't have the money, and first, give them the time they need by alleviating at least the worst aspects of financial insecurity.
And I would just add to what my dad said by drawing on what came up so persistently and consistently in the afternoon plenary session, where it was, whether it was Dr. Berry or Pramal or Katie talking about their work, that it is important to engage those who you're trying to empower in the solution. So I would say too, if there's more that you think we should be doing at CGIU, please tell us, right? From your experience of your commitment and from the people that you're working alongside. The only way we will continue to have more of a democratized, egalitarian, representative community of people who feel called to this work is if the community continues to tell us and we continue to listen and respond to kind of how best to solve that, at least here at CGIU. So I hope that you'll share what you're learning is working and also not working, so that we can be more effective to ensure that our community here looks like the world of people who feel drawn to this work across the globe.
If I could just say one other thing. I think a lot of people who have economic or other handicaps to overcome should also just pay attention and maybe say, I wish I could spend 20 hours a week on this, but I can't. But get yourself in a position where you're empowered to the point where you can exercise the ability to help other people and advance whatever causes you want at the soonest possible point. I mentioned this in the opening night, and I don't want to embarrass her. But sitting over here on the front row is a young woman who graduated from Harvard Law School without the ability to see or hear. She speaks perfect English. Oh, wait. She speaks perfect English. I have no idea how she learned how to do that. With the capacity of the technology of both a friend and aide who's typing in what I'm saying that goes to her through a machine which translates it into Braille. So the next time you think life is tough, she got out of Harvard, and you know what she's doing? She is an advocate for opportunities for people with disabilities, because in fact they have enormous ability, and all over the world that ability is going untapped, diminishing their lives and the rest of ours as well. So let's give it a big hand. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up.
Hi, I'm Navika Shukla from Chicago, and my question is, social issues are so complex and intertwined with one another that oftentimes well-intentioned interventions end up creating more problems than they solve. How can young people ensure that the work they do addresses true issues and is not disruptive to the traditions of a community?
I think again, this came up on our panel earlier, which was about unintended consequences and how to design to be conscious of them and respond to kind of unintended and unexpected consequences when they arise. And I think the answer in some ways is just a continuation or amplification of the answers we gave to the last question, in that if from the beginning you are kind of engaged with, talking with, designing with, and hopefully, if able, employing alongside you people who are from the community you're trying to empower or kind of engage in a social change, then I think you'll be focused on what are the real barriers, and focused on the real barriers kind of in the right priority. And so I hope that helps answer your question. I think that's true really with any challenge in life. There's a new study that came out that was covered in at least both the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal this week, and I know you're going to laugh, but try not to, about the history of the development of sanitary products in the United States, tampons and sanitary pads. I'm very impressed none of you laughed, because clearly this has been an important part of empowering women over our lives and being able to make the right choices for ourselves in school and professionally, in sports and in other areas. And perhaps not surprisingly, although fewer than 10% of the patents for sanitary pads and tampon products are held by women, the products that have been designed and patented by women are far more successful in the marketplace. So I say that because that seems so obvious, but clearly to consumer product companies for generations, at least here in the United States, although I doubt it's different in other parts of the world, that was not so obvious. So I think engaging with and empowering the people that ultimately you're trying to empower or support or change the circumstances of from the beginning, whether it's in a social venture effort or kind of the government or business or otherwise, clearly is more likely to succeed. So hopefully that helps answer your question. And again, I'm just super proud of all of us that when I said don't laugh, no one did. You should laugh at Conan though all the time.
Let me just say this. I think that's a really important question. I think it is becoming increasingly less prevalent among donors, but a lot of governments, including ours, have made a lot of mistakes over the years by deciding in advance what people need and then doing it and figuring out how best to do it and doing it and saying we're putting up the money, we're going to do this. And the road to hell is paved with good intentions. You have to not patronize people you're trying to help, and you have to realize the help you're really trying to give them is empowerment. And you have to be willing to listen and change course. And I'll give you two very quick examples. A friend of mine who has been very active in our foundation is Canadian, and he had this idea because Peru has all kinds of minerals and wonderful things, and there's lots of mining down there, and a lot of it done by foreign countries have been incredibly controversial. So the Canadian mining companies, which had the best reputation, wanted to see if they could put up some money with their allies to basically redo the economy there so that the countries would be better off when the mines played out than when they were running. Laudable goal. So the then president of Peru welcomed us down there, and we were designing it, and he said, but wait, first I have an emergency. I said, and I knew him, and I said, what is it? He said, we have the highest cataract rate among working age people in the world because of our altitude, our atmosphere, the sun, other things, diet, you name it. And I've got enough money now to keep up with the cataract rates, but I've got a 50,000 backlog. Before you do anything else, would you please get cataract surgeries for 50,000 people? We didn't have a clue, but I knew one thing. if we wanted a mining project to work, we better do the cataract. So we found all these partners, and we did more than 50,000. We did it in less than the allotted time, $2 million under budget. And guess what? When we started empowering Indian women, Incans, to go into remote villages to distribute consumer products for the first time ever, it worked a lot better because everybody knew we cared about the people because of the 50,000 cataracts. The other example is, and one of my favorite entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, is here, George Soror, who started this project in Uganda to build schools, Building Tomorrow academies. Uganda has the second largest average family size in the world, a rapidly growing population. They're never going to have enough schools. So George found out he went there as a student. He found out it was costing $200,000 for the government to build the schools and the living facilities for the teachers and give the women teachers any kind of privacy. So he said, I'll do a different model. We'll go in and let the villages design their own schools. We'll design them in a way that will maximize airflow and cool, and we'll do it for $50,000 if you will spend the rest of the money giving more money to the teachers, more money for learning materials, more money for decent conditions so we can get more women teachers out there. And he's doing it, and he's keeping on it. And he did it because even more than their own government, he let the local village people design their schools so they all think they're going to be getting architectural prizes. And if you'd been in the schools, you'd want to give it to them too. So that's my advice. Just don't patronize people. Realize you're there to empower them. And don't be afraid to be guided by what they want. And you'll have fewer unintended consequences. There are always some.
I feel like this woman has, been.
Yeah, here, sure.
Hi, my name is Hannah Kim from George Washington University. My question was, how should you react to people that believe that some social problems are not really issues, so like mental health and climate change?
Well, were you at the panel on mental health?
I was not, unfortunately, this morning.
In our country, it is one of the most, and I think this is true throughout the world, but in the United States, it's one of the most under-resourced challenges we have. But I will say this, there is a general movement, and of course, and Conan asked about the bipartisan polarization. One of the most hopeful things that's happened, there's no money behind it yet, but there will. The United States Senate voted 94-1 about 10 days ago to treat the heroin and prescription drug epidemic that is sweeping across America as a public health problem, not a crime problem, and to deal with it, not just with more treatment, but with serious mental health commitments. Now, we got to get the money to back it up, but it's the beginning. And, you know, in the healthcare law, and even when I was president, we passed a law called mental health parity. But it's one thing to require it and another thing to figure out the infrastructure to deliver it. I have the feeling that we are now on the forefront of doing that. And in a lot of the natural disaster areas that I've worked in the last decade or so, in the aftermath of the tsunami, in the aftermath of Haiti, we finally began to have people realize, and in Katrina, in the Gulf Coast, that we really needed serious mental health supports in the aftermath. So I think the world is waking up to this. It's going to require a lot more trained people, a lot more resources, and a lot more integration into healthcare, so we stop dividing in our own minds physical and mental health and realize it's a continuum. But I think we're getting there, and this is one space, since you're sort of present at the creation of taking this to scale everywhere, where the NGO movement and all of you could have a profound impact everywhere. Look at where I'll give you another example. Look at all the minority religions that are caught up in the Middle East. I recommend a great book called Heirs to Forgotten Kingdoms, which is written by a career British diplomat who's fluent in Arabic and Farsi, about all the little-known religions in the Middle East who are at risk of extinction now in wars involving larger blocks, and what can be done. A lot of them have been saved, but they're very traumatized. A lot of people, if you got the largest refugee population since World War II, I predict there is a far higher percentage of them suffering from serious mental health problems than itching to go blow somebody up with a bomb. So you have lots of opportunities out there, if you care about this, to show how the money can best be spent and to prove that it can make a real difference.
And I just want to add a couple things to that. If you look at the data around the world, kind of mental health is one of the most stigmatized areas still, almost universally, unfortunately. Climate change is almost a particular issue to the United States. We seem to be the only country in the world that still has some resistance at a national level to believing that climate change is real and global warming is happening, and therefore we need an urgent response. So I say that just as a bit of context. I want to add two things to what my dad said. One, I think that on mental health, this is partly why the examples he gave is so important, because if there are actual services, and if those services are provided whether by kind of the government or government aid agencies or NGOs, I know Partners in Health, MSF, Doctors Without Borders, the Mercy Corps, the International Medical Corps, I mean, a number of organizations that are engaged in crisis situations are trying to really ramp up their mental health services. They're actively recruiting psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, social workers, yes, to be able to complement the medical staffs that historically they've deployed, because they recognize that they have a real responsibility to their own Hippocratic oaths to be able to provide the types of counseling and recovery and post-traumatic stress services to the people that they're treating for injuries or tuberculosis or the aftermath of gender-based violence. So I think we're moving in that direction, but anything kind of that we can do to support that from a awareness standpoint, from a funding standpoint, I think we should do, because I think when services are present, that's an important part of eliminating the stigma and shifting the perception. The second thing I would say is clearly young people have demonstrated how powerful we collectively are in this country, in the almost revolutionary shift in less than 20 years in the views around equal marriage. And so I bring that up because we have clearly exerted profound influence over our grandparents and our parents' perceptions of what is first acceptable, at least on this basis. Some of you are laughing, and true. Thank you, Dad. Exhibit A, and to a normative sense. And if we look at the climate change kind of polling here in the United States, middle school kids are even more aware of the realities of climate change than college-age students are, who are even more aware than kind of people in their 30s and 40s, and even more aware than people in their 50s and 60s. So just talking about and not taking for granted that people know things that you know, kind of elevating the voice of people who are even younger than you are to be advocates to their parents, to their grandparents, to their communities about the challenges, but also the opportunities of climate change, I think is not to be underestimated, because we've seen the real impact of those personal conversations and dialogues in families and communities and real social change, even in our lifetime, and some of us clearly have been part of that in a positive sense.
All right. We've come to the conclusion, I'm getting the signal that we have no more time for the question section of this program. I want to personally thank everyone for letting me crash this party, having me here at the Clinton Global Initiative University at UC Berkeley. This was fun. Mr. President, What's going to happen now is Chelsea and I are going to leave, and you are going to, I think, take the podium and wrap up this incredible weekend. So thank you for having me. This is a real honor.